Hello, Dream Team. Welcome back to episode 2 of season 2 of The Good, the Bad and the Rugby in partnership with our good friends at City Index, the leading provider of spread betting, CFD and FX trading. It is good to have you back with us once again. We're picking up speed as we get season 2 underway. It's just Tinds and I this week. We thought Hask could do with an early season break. He's obviously recovering from his broken back. And actually, it works really well this week, given our guest, who is a pretty special character and a guy that both of us have done a lot of work with over the years, in inverted commas. And when I say to you, 2 Ronnies, Little and Large, Cannon and Ball, Chaz and Dave, Kylie and Jason, Crockett and Tubbs, Starsky and Hutch, Tindall and Greenwood.
Fits perfectly.
Any
Right
others?
in there.
Anything else you'd like to throw in
Rodney
there?
and Delboy.
Rodney and Delboy.
He was always selling watches.
Absolutely nailed it. It was Rodney and Delboy.
Well, and there was the time in the quarterfinal of the World Cup where a very funny Welshman did call you Rodney Trotter.
Who was that?
We're going off at half time. They should have won, shouldn't they? Wales.
Yeah.
And I still think they should have battered us in that quarterfinal. They were all over us, killed us. We overtrained, got everything wrong, clung on 10-3 half time. I think Colin Jarvis was held up over the line at half time. And I mean, Brisbane was Wales. It was like Wales. The daffodils and leeks everywhere. And as we walked off, I had Lawrence and Tinds just behind me. And these 4 lads from Ponte literally leant over and in unison, unscripted, went, "Oi, Rodney Trotter, you bloody shit you are." And even though we were about to get knocked out in a World Cup quarterfinal, it was quite funny.
Yeah, I was literally
Shoulders.
head down, don't laugh, don't laugh. And then I just saw Will's shoulders. So I started laughing. And then that's when Clive said he gave the best speech of his career. And we were just talking about how funny these 4 guys from Ponte were.
Yeah, and then Jason Robertson did that thing. I never get enough credit for that try.
Is that the one where you put up? Is that the one we put up the 2?
Did we miss the shot?
that was the
TMO.
Did we miss the shot at goal? Because he should have passed it inside to me and I'd have been underneath the
Would it?
stakes.
You would have been, wouldn't you? And you were in second gear. Was it like 14th gear at 1,000 revs?
There's a little coaching point for anyone if you go back and watch that try. Don't work back as a centre because Will was like walking back and then Robbo's made the break and Will's just had to turn around and he's got like a 5 metre head start and as he passes him, he's in the perfect position for the pass. So it was a bit like Tony Spreadbury trying to chase down Brian Habana.
Up the left, yeah. Which was the other pass in that tournament where they should have gone inside?
Final.
It's unbelievable.
You'd never have had the drop goal.
No, I only saw it recently and thought, wow, Johnny really should have gone right, not left.
Yeah.
And Ben Cohen the most underrated player from that 15?
Yeah, I mean, the 3-step that he could do was, he'd beat anyone.
Yeah.
The ability to fake to go out, go back in, then go back out, and it just left everyone.
Do you think he was the most underrated of all of you?
Who gets all the headlines? The obvious ones: Johnny, Martin, Lol, Hilly is the sort of
because we've
water
joked in the
carrier.
past about Richard Hill. If in doubt as to who man of the match was, if there's any speculation, go to Richard Hill for his unseen work. It was always a kind of the go-to in the accolades.
Cohen. So the reason I'd say Cohen is if you were to say who would have been the best decathlete, he would have been the best. I mean, so strong, so quick, such endurance. He was an absolute beast. I mean, proper unit who learned how to score tries, get in the right places. Unbelievable defender. I think just as you watch history unfold and see more and more people get more and more credit than perhaps they deserve, and some just quietly disappear into the background.
Yeah,
him along with Woodman would be 2 players who've just quietly sidled off into the sunset and go, pretty sure I wouldn't have wanted to start that game without those 2.
Yeah.
he's still doing calendars.
I know. I keep
unbelievable
on socials, and I keep seeing him in his pants. He's pulling on a jacket, and I was like, another naked calendar.
I think we could probably give the credit, the Ben Cohen or the Will Greenwood calendar. There's possibly only one winner in that category.
I wouldn't have the same following. He does amazing work.
He does. I was going to go on to say one of the finest partnerships to wear the red rose, the centres of attention who took England to World Cup glory in 2003. I was going to say, is it the grafter and the glory, the horse and the cart, the pain and the glory? How do you 2 equate the combination that grew?
So we exaggerated each other's strengths and covered each other's weaknesses. I mean, you become more binary as you get old. He couldn't pass and I couldn't tackle. I mean, the reality is somewhat different to that. But if you were to look back and pigeonhole super strengths, I wanted to know all of the rules. all of the moves, exactly what was going on in training. Tinds would roll out of bed, not give a monkeys, and would only care about when he actually had the ball. Again, I exaggerate slightly with old age, but to try and make the point that individually, and I say I've got more comfortable saying this as I grow old. I would never stand in front of a camera and say I was one of the greatest centres England have, right? Put me in front of a camera with him and I'll go, we'll take anyone on, any place, anywhere. And you'd go, well, you had some weaknesses, and go, well, we'd find a way to make up for it. We'd find a way to win. The kids now call hashtag beat the game. We would find a way to have more points than the opposition at the end. And that made it a really, really special thing. And I wrote before the World Cup final in 2019, and I think this extends out to the whole team. I said not one of the team that made the World Cup final of 2019 would make it into our team of 03. And people went, wow, you're a bit bullish. And I said, well, I would hope that not one of us would make it into their team, because it's actually the relationships you build, the trust you build, the understanding you get of what makes each other's tick both on and off the field made it impossible to try and compare across eras onions with apples.
I mean, that's what I always felt, that what we had was, obviously I was very relaxed all the time. Will was always very tense, very nervous, lucky socks, lucky pants,
Which used to go AWOL, is that right?
Sometimes.
When Austin was fixed, they'd find him. He once climbed into the back of the bus at Pennyhill Park. I mean, literally, so you throw your kit bags on to the back of a bus when you get on. And I wouldn't keep my passport in the safe. Passport can get robbed and wallet can get robbed. Lucky socks went in the safe because I knew he'd try and break into my room and steal my socks. So anyway, it was
they're Sedba socks, aren't you?
No, they were the ones my sister used to buy me. They aren't that lucky. I went through 7 pairs. I had 6 shoulder reconstructions and 2 groin operations and nearly died. So I'm not sure where the luck comes into it, but I would protect them. And you'd get to Saturday about 11 o'clock, wouldn't it, at Pennyhill Park? We'd throw the bag on the bus. I'd go, another week made. But there was this one week where he'd climbed into the boot of the bus waiting for me to throw my bag like a little Gollum with the ring, the special one. And I turned up and I'm getting changed and the lads all know. And I'm like going, I know, I've made it. I made it another week. Where are my socks? I turned around and Bolshaw and Tindall, who were the original cannon and ball, by the way, try and take it serious. You're about to play New Zealand. Like, lad, can you stop messing around? And there was Oz, because in that era, he used to wear jock straps still. I don't think I have jock straps anymore. And he had my lucky socks down his jock strap, shaking them and said, come and get them if you want to play in them.
Jesus, what a thought. Go on.
But that was the sort of thing, is we always figured out how to get it done. There were certain tackles I could definitely trust Will on, and there were certain tackles or body positions he'd be in where I was like, I need to help him out here. He's in a bit of trouble, and vice versa. And it's like I could see when Will saw that 2 phases time he could make a real impression, but we needed someone to go down the middle, and that's the whole basis of how you build as a team. Is you understand when people are in tough spots that they don't want to be in, and you help solve that problem, and vice versa. And that's what we were great at as a whole backline, actually, that was playing in that game, is we could solve other people's problems when they're wrong, and then also we knew when people are in the right position to say, give them the ball and let them do.
I was thinking about this yesterday, and Clive was great about allowing us to talk about this. I do wonder how good we could have been if there was a little bit more awareness and space to be vulnerable. I still think in our day you had to be all things to all men. I'm invincible, and actually reaching out and saying, guys, I'm on one shoulder here and have been for about 4 years since I dislocated for the 5th time. I do sort of, is there anything, imagine asking Phil Larder for help. Now, Phil was amazing and drilled us into a World Cup winning team, and defensively we were as good as anyone. We won in both Australia and New Zealand before the World. I get all that, but just sometimes I just think, if I'm going to make it to the end of this tournament, I really don't need to be in this position right now.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think nowadays, actually, the lads who play have an ability, or coaches are aware and say, look, I've spotted this.
Yeah,
we can work with it.
But also, I think that some of that created what we were, because we were like granite, because we had to be. You wouldn't, even back to 99, where Clive was doing sessions where if you drop out, you get dropped from the squad.
Yeah.
People were pulling hamstrings and doing bits. It was all a learning curve, but it also made you very durable. And we were an unbelievably durable team. In fact, that whatever the situation was in, there was never a fact that we were going to lose. We could always, well, unless it was a home nation, which are the only people were really lost to. We always knew we could get it done.
Do you remember the first kind of meetings and the first games between the two of you? Because you obviously made was it 97 you made your debut? And then you obviously came along in 2000.
But then
he
you
did
were,
his
you
bit.
were
I had a
injured.
groin. You did all your big.
So I was with Catty for the first
couple
of years, and then Will
2001
came back.
The Rockside Hair. He's back.
Yeah, were you in and around the squad for 99?
Close. I did the World Cup camp, and then Barry John Mather got the extension. I got dropped, and he stayed in, and then I came in when Guskett retired for the quarter final, and then obviously played the next.
I watched you bombing up and down the pitch. You battered Ireland in 2000, didn't you?
Yeah,
scored on debut.
And then when you came back in, you came back in 2001 and played with Catty because I was injured with my knee, and I would miss a lot of that tournament then.
That's the other thing that this isn't about blowing sunshine up. Tinds was proper quick. People go, big lump, proper quick, and could kick. So in everyone World Cup final, pinged him. That right foot just shifted it off Wilco, shut him down. And I think that was a good thing about that team. He was people's weaknesses were far less of a weakness than oppositions considered it.
So it's really interesting asking you about the two of you as a partnership. And I was sort of going to throw out another, Shearer and Sheringham and Torval and Dean and Jordan and Pippen, etc.
Didn't both Shearer and Sheringham score goals, though?
Yeah, possibly, yes.
There's only one of us who ever scored.
He scored some big tries, though.
He scored double. Basically changed the match in 2003 to win a Grand Slam. Thanks very much.
There you go.
Got injured the one we won by 42 points.
Yeah, but
that was a great move. That was clock option.
Yeah, and you were like, run wide. I was like, mate, no.
Clock option.
Dricko's drifting and Magsy's staying on you.
Clock option is basically the one they're all running now, but they often go 9. Now they throw 9-12, 9-12, 13, 10 slides around the back and you give it.
Yeah.
We got it from the Brumbies. We stole a lot of moves. Stole a lot of moves from Rugby League. Drifter was Hull Kingston Rovers' warm-up that Brian Ashton had brought to us. And then we just made them our own. But clock option was that classic one where everyone expected Wilco to go out the back. He's got the beautiful fizz pass. You've got Bolshaw on an arc or Lucy. It's like they're going to play there. They're not going to go up the middle. They've loaded the midfield with Mags and O'Driscoll. You'd be an idiot to try and run up the middle with Mags and O'Driscoll to rip you apart. But actually, go attack the places they least expect to attack, and you walk. I mean, there was a bus.
Yeah,
I'm not trying to undermine your try, but a bus could have driven through where you went.
The idea is, if you're a defender, as soon as Wilco throws that pass, the 10 should be shifting onto you. But they still stayed pretty straight, and Magsy stayed on, and obviously Dricko started the drift.
Yeah, because Ronan preferred to just run up, touch his man, and go, I've made a tackle.
So in some ways, Magsy couldn't leave him, but then Dricko's gone, and it was a big hole.
Mm.
A big hole.
Did it click as a partnership, or did it work because of graft and understanding? I mean, what do you think was the essence of your partnership?
Well, it's quite interesting that both of us, and Will's just said it, would say definitely wasn't the best centre out there, but
individually,
but as a whole, but also mentality-wise could play at a constant level, which I think was my strength, was being able to not make many mistakes, fill gaps, be that how the game worked then was being that extra back rower in some ways, or in terms of getting over ball, nosing ball, but being able to defend. And I think it was more that I filled the gap that kept the glue together with the forwards. I was like the forwards' best friends.
Created the time and space for me to be able to play. And
then Will, was his ultimate strength was ability to read the game 3 phases ahead and go, I'm not needed here, here. I can make my best impact here, and that's what I'm going to do. And it'll normally lead to a try. He picked up some that if the ball had gone back inside, I could have picked up a couple more. But the chips over the tops, the grubbers through, the little bits of individual skill, that was, what his confidence. It might not have looked it in the changing rooms, but then his confidence when he was on the field to actually do stuff, I never really did, and it's something that I wish I'd done more. Is back yourself in that way. But then I also knew that necessarily wasn't ever meant to be my game. My game was to be the glue that then, the people who managed to be able to pull off all that bit, I sort of
the glue and the glitter. That's what we're
there you go, the glue and the glitz.
Did you drink together?
Yeah. It was one of us far more than the other.
White wine spritzer and a pint of ale.
No, I used to think I could, and then met these just different levels of endurance. I mean, proper endurance athletes on the pop.
Were you a tipper and a sipper type thing?
No, I had no handbrake, would go screaming, fall off the edge, and have 2 days of horrific headaches, going, oh, I'm never drinking again, until the following week. Whereas this chap and
repeatability.
Yeah.
Endurance. How do you look back now? I mean, obviously it's 20 odd years. What is it now? It's 18 years in all since that moment. But how do you look back now on it? Well, because funny, you and I have worked together for 18, 19 years, and we've spoken a lot about rugby, but I've never really sort of gone into you and the career and all that kind of thing, because I want to ask you about the book, etc. But just your reflections on 18 years ago.
So,
well,
obviously, you try not to spend the second half of your life reliving the first half of your life.
Yeah.
But you do get asked that, what was it like? What was it like? And I go, I sort of think, okay, I'm going to force myself to think of a time where I'd actually want to go back to. And where would it be and how long would I want it to last for? Mm. And the reality is, I don't really remember much about the games at all, the detail. But I could close my eyes and be back in the change room before the final. And I'd love to do that 5 minutes again. Tunes banging out, Eminem coming on. I know exactly where my locker is. Far left-hand side, Lucky Socks, physio beyond that, left-hand side, showers, far end, right-hand side, out through the door. I know exactly Jono opposite me, 3 along. I can tell you exactly where everyone was sat. And I can literally feel it, the moment when there was a sort of invisible X in the middle of the change room that Jono would he didn't say a lot. Lol would do all the chatting like Lenny McLean, and Backy would be like Bill Sykes' dog from Oliver Twist, Bullseye, just yamping. So they'd be doing all the chat. And Jono would not say a lot. And then when he stood in the middle, there would be this invisible gravitational pull and we'd just form a circle. And he didn't have to say that much that night. He sort of went to start and went, nah, you're good. And that would be, I'd love to be there again. I don't want to be out on the field being snapped in two again. But those are the moments that I cherish, actually, the behind the scenes stuff where you put in the graft to give yourself the chance.
How was it? Obviously, it was a pretty emotional time for you through that whole World Cup. Do you look back and, obviously flying back after the South Africa game, you could have gone back before it, right? And then you chose not to. Clive gave you the option, which was a great thing that he did. But how was, did that make it more special at the end of it, or was it just sort of hell for 6 weeks? Not hell, but
are you happy to put some context around it?
So in September 2002, Cara went into premature labour, and our first son, Freddie, was alive for just under an hour. Chelsea and Westminster Hospital, Josephine Barnes Ward, 3rd floor up there on the left-hand side. They're just certain moments in life, certain locations you are digitally imprinted on your head. And then rugby allowed me it was the autumn campaign where I sort of came out. I was living in Southfields at the time. All the curtains were shut, all the windows were shut, all the doors were shut. Only close personal friends came around, and as a couple, we really, really struggled to live, really. And actually, it was rugby that brought me and allowed me an escapism from the worry of, will it happen again? What have we just been through? So that autumn series was fabulous. So to then fast forward a year later, all huge excitement. Cara pregnant again, walking down the aisle. Her mum didn't know. I don't think her mum's ever quite done the maths. I think it's some great people at the wedding. All went off. We sort of had an impromptu stag do in Perth, didn't we? After beating Australians, it was just a great year. Flying to the World Cup, we're number one in the world. All's going. I'm playing pool downstairs in the Perth hotel, and the phone goes, and it's the doctor, Mark Johnson, who's, if I fast forward super quick, he's set up Bourne. And that's why I've been to North Pole and Kilimanjaro and got Dean Mum involved. But go back to probably about October 2nd, 2003, and he goes, I think you need to come home. Cara's gone into labour again. I think the whole process is going to repeat itself. So I was like, what do I do? Didn't know what to do. Went up to my room, went to see Otis, Dave Redding. He says, you got to tell Clive. Go and see Clive. Louise Ramsey books me on every flight out. He goes, if you're at training, great. If you're not, I understand. Part of the reason I decided to stay was I had a chat with my old man. He was a pretty shrewd individual who's done it tough. And he sort of went, you've been robbed of one thing by this already. Don't let it rob you of the second thing. And people will say, well, that's a little bit old school. But at the time, I thought, right, well, I'll need to stay. South Africa was the main game. We could then sort of track it and think Uruguay or Samoa and Uruguay then after that. So there was a window of opportunity to stay and play. Didn't tell any of the lads. I think only Martin Johnson knew, then announced to the lads afterwards. So went home. And then
having scored against South Africa.
I also had a major cock up in that game.
Oh yeah, I do remember that.
So I look back on it and go, was my head really there? So Louis Kern had missed about 3 or 4 pens, and he had another one. I was chatting to the referee, the touch judge, I think it was McNeil, and he's by me. I said, he can't miss another one, can he? He's not going to. This kid's a metronome. He never missed. He'd missed 2 or 3, and as he kicked it, I thought it's missed right hand post. So before it's in the air, I've turned it. Wow, you wouldn't believe it. He's missed another to the touch judge. And then threw it back without grounding it. So who knows whether my brain was switched on or not. In the reality, I finished a try-off that Moody made with some ball skills, but just dived on the ball. The dead ball area in Perth was 1 trillion miles long. It was a Sean Goater-esque touch, and still got it in there. And then flew back. Sorry, and when I got home, actually, Cara was in much better state. They'd managed to do a cervical suture. Had given her some drugs to calm labour down. She'd been told she's going to be in hospital for 4 months. And by the end of the week, it was actually Cara who sent me back and said, look, there's nothing you can do here. You might as well. In a sort of amateur dramatic fashion, she said, look, I'll keep the baby. You go and win the World Cup. And jump back on. Struggled for the first week. Again, Wales game. It was fast. Yeah. It wasn't insane. I went off after 50 minutes after scoring, and the doc Kempy took me to a hospital. Had some blood tests, just completely drained. It has to be an effective flying around the world, back and forth. Not really. We did understand sports science, but as soon as you land, get off the plane, train, play, massive game. Tinds has already said I'm a massive worrier, so I was worrying about what was going on at home. I was worrying about letting the team down. I was worrying about not, and so that all came to a head. And then from there, actually, as a collective, we hardly did any training, did we?
Yeah,
it's only fun and fun.
I've always said that one of the things Clive got right is when the senior players went to him and said, "We've overtrained. We have done way too much." We basically undercooked ourselves for the next 2 games, but that was what we needed. We didn't need to train. We'd been together for 3 years. It was just all about having energy on the Saturday, which we didn't have in that Wales game because we were training up on the Gold Coast in boiling hot conditions. We were doing far too long sessions. We're doing our usual sessions, but they were far too long for that heat. And we changed it for the next 2 weeks, and we basically only did walkthroughs really.
Yeah.
But that's all we needed. It's been ingrained in us, and we just went out and executed.
One of the really interesting things, actually, that is, from my perspective, is having worked with both of you, is absolutely, as you call it, which is Tinds is just very relaxed, sort of happy to hit the recline button and take it along. But Will, having worked with you for 18 years or so, I mean, your life story is extraordinary. I mean, you could write, we're going to talk about world class in a moment or two, but you could write a number of novels on a number of different subjects, aside from obviously Quins and Leicester and winning the World Cup with England, etc. You've taught, you're now big in business. You are one of the best at playing the game in terms of networking, etc., of anyone I've ever come across. You've mentioned Freddie, the fact that you almost lost your life on the rugby pitch. I follow your wife on Insta, and she is an amazing woman, given, the story as well around the family that you've built, and I know you love so much, but that there is a story there as well. Do you ever have a chance to press pause and just take a deep breath and reflect on everything? Or is your life just an absolute sort of whirlwind?
I think one of the teachers as parents, teachers as grandparents, old school grandparents on mum's side, I think I was always just brought up in get up, get busy, get doing something, be better at the end of the day at something. I think I think that's both a blessing and a curse. To sort of answer your question, it's a blessing because it gives you that drive to work out a way. I live by the fact the strong take from the weak, but the smart take from the strong. It's the only thing that allowed me to overtake the rugby field, because I was the weediest bloke, I think, in the World Cup final 2000. Certainly in backs. If there'd been a race of all the backs who took part in the 2003 World Cup final, I'm bottom 5 percentile. I might have been I might have beaten that Uruguayan centre, but that was about it. If we went bench press, I'm definitely bottom. And so finding a way to win and getting up and doing stuff is just always. I mean, what I feel I never really do is I don't necessarily enjoy stuff. Once you've achieved it, it's like, right, park done, what's next? Park done, what's next? And
do you work at that?
I'm trying to, yeah. We've been chatting to the missus today, actually, about having some therapy about it. I mean, genuinely, to try and find some peace. I find my brain is overly active.
Yeah.
I find it's just constantly whirring. Sometimes I just want to shut it off and turn it down and just go, today you're just going to watch the Netflix series. I'm trying to get into the Squid Game, which we
were talking about that earlier, actually.
Rocco loves Squid Game, and I've watched half an episode. I thought, this is really good. And now I'll park that, and because I'll be just on. So I'm certainly not in any way trying to say, look at me, lucky me, superhuman. It is given me a huge amount of advantage to have that drive. But there are times I just wish exactly what you do. I could press pause, press stop, but I find that really difficult to do.
It's interesting. Does that equate to what you knew 20 years ago?
Yes, but and I think it's way there's similarities there in the fact that I never look back. It's what is the next thing? Obviously, Will, you played what till 2006. But as soon as we finished, it was right. We've got to defend it next time. We've got the Six Nations. It's sort of I think that was sort of beaten into us, the mentality of that team, in terms of the whole thing of Clive beyond number one was always like, how do you stay at number one rather than look back and celebrate on your times? But it's probably a little bit better at Will enjoying them at the end of whilst I was doing it. But I think there's not much change. I think that I've noticed change since he's finished over the last few years, that he's not as intense in terms of always on it. So I have noticed that. But still, he's just I would say he's more focused it now through affinity and the stuff he's done with Ben and that side of it. I think you were a little bit too focused, weren't you, for a long period on networking and moving around the room in terms of people. Whereas I think he's chillaxed. Obviously, he went back to teaching, which I think helped. Got back in touch with Maidenhead. I think that was part of it. Was it getting yourself grounded back to
and you talk about Cara, my missus, and living with neurodiversity in the family. I think that you don't want it for those reasons. I think it's made us a kinder family, and again, an ability to have more time for people and do that. I feel like I'm sort of in therapy now with you two here, but I do. I would say certainly 6 or 7 years ago, I went from 9,000 revs till actually I need to find 6,000 revs.
Yeah.
And be happy saying no a little bit more often.
Can I ask you about Matilda and neurodiversity? And I suppose the journey that you've been on with that as well, because we've spoken about it in the past. And actually, I wanted to say as well that when you were incredibly good to me, actually, when my daughter was very premature at 28 and a half weeks. And I will never forget that. But I also remember, and I've always been in awe of the drive that you have and the way that you've harnessed that for the awareness that you've driven, both for Bourne and also with neurodiversity at the moment. But in terms of that as a challenge to the family and how you've come through it, I mean, you must be A, incredibly proud of it, but B, I imagine there is a hell of a lot that you've had to do to get through that.
Yeah, and again, therapy's helped, joint therapy, to work out that we talk about. It's not a segue back into partnerships here, but my missus and I are very different. And actually, to find a way for us to be able to parent well when you're living with neurodiversity, we've given ownership of it back to our daughter. And actually, if you see a lot of the stuff Cara now does, she's stepping away from it a little bit and allowing to become the young woman and not make it a story. But the thing is, it's a challenge between actually creating more awareness around it. And if we can, if everyone can begin to change their vocabulary a little bit, then
can you just explain what? Because I don't actually. I mean, obviously I follow Carrie, but just in terms of neurodiversity is what?
So we're all on the spectrum.
Yeah.
And the reality is, me and Mike, we've just described our differences on the spectrum. And there's a classic bell curve where 95% of us live in the centre of it, where you sort of go through the maths bit, and then in the tails on the outside, you find different wiring of the brain. And the reality is, if you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. Some like crowds, some don't like crowds. Some are verbal, some are non-verbal. I've got Caro in the back now saying, "Don't talk too much about our daughter. This is her thing. We need to do it."
But I definitely I don't want to push this
no,
anywhere.
Exactly. But
I
do want people to reach out to parents who are living with children with neurodiversity, because it's very easy, because their kids are perceived as different, for those kids to fall out, not fall out as in argue, but just be removed from that section of society, and then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, and it's very, very hard for peer groups and relationships to build. And actually what they do need, if on occasion, is support and friends around them, and smiles and laughters and dancing and being invited to parties. So if anything came out of this chat, I would say, look, just keep an eye on your mates. All children are completely different. They're not just being naughty. They're not just ignoring you. They do just want to sit under the table on their own. That is their happy place. They're not all ravers and dancers. They don't all want to stand up in front of the microphone and do a speech, and find a way. And we call it radical acceptance. So we just accept people. And there's always a danger when you say things like that. You've gone, oh, look at you all trendy with radical acceptance. Actually, it's just having lived through it and seeing other children live through it and especially through teaching, is every child can be taught. They just need different ways, and find a way to connect and sit and listen, and less judgment from that perspective. So, yeah, moving on from there, the request would be, literally, I remember John Eales did a brilliant speech. I put him on the spot the night before the 2013 Lions second test on the roof of the Bicycle Club in Melbourne. I was with Scott Quinlan. I said, "Come on, if you're in the Australian change room now, what would you say?" And they were 1-0 down, Aussies, weren't they? Melbourne second test series. You lose a second, it's gone.
Terrible game.
And he goes, "Okay, I want them to play for four groups. I want them to play for themselves. Like, lads, everything you've done together. I'll praise you. I want you to play for the people next year, for everything they've done alongside you. I want you to play for the unknown fan, the person who wears the Wallaby gold that you'll never meet, but actually spends their life following us, and wear them, carry them with you. And then I want you to go out of here, and I want you to do an action. I want you to ring up the person who got you here, or write them a letter." And that's always sort of stuck with me. So who
would you write to?
I came home and, as always, dived in with both feet. My missus came in. I wrote 50 letters that I hadn't that I hadn't written. But so if there's one takeaway from this, and I'm guessing the age group and the demographic of the people who listen to this are much younger than me, but are male and female, but will be mid-20s. I'm guessing that's who you're after.
I'm not sure there's anyone out there listening, actually.
And they might not have children, or they're about to go through childbearing and having relationship with that sort of stuff without getting overly heavy. As you go into that, look out for each other and look out for each other's kids, because everyone's got a story behind the little boxes.
I was just going to ask, obviously, there's, as Alex has said, there's a lot in there through your career. Then once you get to retiring, obviously people talk a lot now about the void that retiring leaves in terms of people, persons. I mean, you've had so much going on. Was there always, you always knew where it'd lead you? Obviously, you were a trader before rugby. Did you always think it'd lead you back there, or did you always fancy that media career? And obviously, then you fell into affinity a bit, but then it's somewhere where you found your home. Yeah.
Just tell us a bit about affinity and what you're doing there.
So on the Sky thing, super fast. Like I suspect it works at BT and Amazon now with young players. You just invite players on when they're injured and they have a go. And I was invited on by Martin Turner, and Mark Durden-Smith was the host, and it was at Welford Road. I was in the studio with Dowie. And
you gave a brilliant line. Do you remember the line?
The fat lady's not singing, but I didn't know if that's totally inappropriate thing to say.
And you said you're not singing yet to Durners. He spluttered his cappuccino.
So Martin Turner just invited me back a couple of times, and then it got to the end of my career and he said, look, I'd like you to come and do 20 days a year. So it absolutely, totally fell into that. The city had completely changed.
But you, with the media, you wanted it. I mean, there are players who know that they're going to be good at it and they'll work very hard to get it. And you were definitely one of those. There are others who think it'll come to them and sort of sit and wait. And I'm not sure that they necessarily do. But had you picked out the media as something to do?
No, the opportunity came. And once I was invited in, I thought, well, I might as well try and be as good as I can.
Yeah.
So, I still write. The big turning point for me actually was when I had a contract with News of the World. And what you do a ghost piece. So you'd play on a Saturday, and then you'd go above the gym in the West End, wouldn't you? You'd go and meet your ghostwriter from the News of the World or Times or whoever it was, and they'd do an interview with you for 10 minutes, and then you'd open up the newspaper the next day and go, it happened in my newspaper. I went, I never said that.
Yeah.
So I'd ring my agent and friend, Nick Keller, and go, they've done it. He says, okay, stop ringing me on a Sunday. It's getting really boring. There's two options. Shut up, take the money, and it's chip paper. 2, we'll rip the contract up. You write your own. I said, no one writes their own. I said, well, we're going to write your own. So fast forward sort of 18 months, I said, right, I'll write my own. So started writing my own words for the Telegraph, and sort of 16 years later now, and about 1.2 million words in and around rugby. I've done 2,500 words on Quins this morning, but I still love it. I sat down and thought, what am I going to write about? I found out that they're operating around, their acronym is TRUE, which is tempo, unconventional, enjoyment, and R is relations, or in terms of, I can't remember what the R is, but I picked that up with Laurie Dalrymple because I went on Friday night because the owner invited me back. And I sat there, I just couldn't, and then you get into the play. So I love doing that, and always did. So I think the opportunity came along with the Sky stuff, and actually I realised I really quite enjoyed it. I love the detail and the analysis. I do like watching players and groups come up with new stuff.
Who was the best at the cart? You, Neville, or Hussein? With the graphics, that would have been a show in its own right. Who could annotate slow mo, draw angles
to your screens?
Yes, it would be to your start your screens. Who would have been the best at annotating?
I'll tell you who's good as well. You've missed one out.
Nick Doherty.
Doman's great.
Yeah, he's great.
Wells at the Rugby League again on the weekend. I think he's great.
There's a show in there somewhere. Who can squiggle the most on live footage?
And what I'd like to do, the challenge would be to, I think this idea nearly came up, where you would just be you wouldn't know what was coming. And it could be Formula One, it could be darts, and you'd see a clip and you go, right.
Hyperbox.
Go straight into it. And then you asked about where I ended up. And then in a pub with a friend of ours, who's now the chief commercial officer for Affinity. And he told me about it.
What do you do?
We are customer touch points. So we are not a contact center technology. We're artificial intelligence, and basically we'll improve all the conversations that take place between your organization and all of their customers across all channels. But mainly focused.
You get to where you want to be quicker, and you speak to the right person.
Behavioral pairing.
Right.
Has that sort of explained it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
It has. But the other thing I want to ask you about, which I've never actually spoken to you in detail about, is Lions 97. Was it Bloemfontein?
Yeah, I've got a mixed relationship with the Lions.
But funny enough, and actually I've spoken to you about this in the past, I did 18 years at Sky or whatever it was, and there were times as a broadcaster, and I've said this on this show before, where I was genuinely worried that I was going to have to broadcast the news that someone had not made it through in 80 minutes. And the one that really springs to mind, do you remember the game in Belfast when Alex Good got cleaned out by Jared Payne in the air?
Yeah.
And it stopped for 35 minutes. And I actually genuinely worried at that point that we were going to have to talk about things that no broadcaster in any capacity ever wants to discuss. But actually that was you in 97. And But before we come on to you and the Lions, etc., have you parked that and moved on? Is it something you think about regularly? You nearly died on the field of play by swallowing your tongue in an extraordinary tackle, and most of our viewers and listeners will know all about it. But how do you square the fact that the game that has given you so much almost cost you everything?
So I actually struggled to come back from groin operations and shoulder operations more than that. Because what are you talking about? You need that, because I have absolutely no idea.
Right.
3 days of my life are completely blank. I remember warming up. I remember we did some passing drills in the Bloemfontein Hotel. The main squad had stayed down in Durban for the second test. So only the playing squad had flown up to Bloem. We trained. Nigel Redmond had come in and was captain. And Alan Bateman, I always cut my sleeve. Now they're all short sleeves and no one plays in long sleeves. In the old days, you got good old fashioned cotton
parachutes.
They were Adidas ones at the time. They were big jumpers, and if you were skinny, you'd wear shoulder pads to make.
He wore one of mine the other day to do a bit of
top
biz,
speed,
and he
3 miles an hour.
Obviously, I cut all mine as well, and literally just looked like two sticks.
It was like spaghetti in a bag.
Steptoe and son. Yeah. And Alan Bateman came in, and he said, "Don't cut your sleeves off tonight, Greens." He didn't call me Greens then. I wasn't called Shaggy then. What was I called in those then? Stickman. And
William, what have you done?
And he said, there's a bit of moisture out there. And I know we both sort of carried the ball one-handed when you're in and through. And he just felt that the ball on the skin would be a bit slippy, so keep a little bit of fabric between the ball. So I didn't. And it was then that sleeve that I don't remember the name of the chap who did it. Katsia, I think, but I don't know his first name. Caught my sleeve. And it was my sleeve that I hadn't cut off that was the thing that got me, that whipped me around like a sort of judo throw. But I've just told you I don't remember any of this. I've only remembered that and the sleeve because I've seen it. Yeah. But I remember the first half, and I remember one of those unbelievable nights where it was as close to rugby perfection as there really had been, not from myself, but from the collective. Just tore a really good Orange Free State, the unofficial fourth test. And then the next thing I really remember is being at Kings Park watching Jerry drop the goal. And I think the game was a Tuesday and that was a Saturday. So not a lot in between. So in terms of having to park that was never an inhibiting factor of playing, because there was no muscle memory of a situation about to hurt. Whereas there were some tackles where you'd find yourself in a situation, you'd go, my shoulder's going to go here, and you'd pull. Yeah. You'd pull. I mean, I remember going back to the final, I defended half decent that night, but there was one where Wilco swept me up on my inside, where Mortlock's just done his late step on my left, and even in a World Cup final, my arm's there, and I've pulled my arm away. I've gone, if my arm stays there, my arm's dislocated. But I know Wilco's on my inside, so I need to do that. So there are moments that from dislocations, and I imagine people who have knee problems are the same thing. It's having that confidence to put yourself back in that same position. But part of the problem with a lot of the head injury issues is most people don't remember what happened. Therefore, you're not afraid to do it again.
So is it just that incident is in a box somewhere, totally metaphorically in the back of an attic?
Gone,
you don't even need to worry about it.
No, well, the long-term implications of that we'll see over the next 30 years without trying to be a scaremonger, but we've obviously got a few of our friends who are having real issues with head injuries. At the moment, I don't feel as though that's impacting me at the moment, so I feel fortunate, but I've still got 30 odd years to go, and we'll see how that plays out. One thing on that head to talk about how the brain is this ridiculously powerful thing. In those days, if you were concussed, you had a mandatory 21-day ban. Couldn't play. Now, I sort of slightly argue with my dad about his exact wording, but his wording would be something along the lines of, he says it's make sure you're really concussed before you admit to it. Right. I would go...
I think that comes with a hashtag old school, doesn't it?
Yeah. So, yeah.
Massively.
Yeah, yeah. So, and again, this has been replayed to me. I'm stretchered off. Dr. Robson's turned white. He thinks I'm dying. My mum said, William, all this is happening and playing out. I get put in the back of the ambulance, and Dad's in the back of the ambulance. There's only room for one. So Dad came to the hospital with me, and he goes, He's just turned 80 now, and we had a beer about it at his 80th at Real Rugby Club a few weeks ago, and remind ourselves of it. And he goes, "It'll be what we talk about when I finally say goodbye." I said, "Yeah, you mean the ambulance, the thing that I can't remember?" He goes, "Because he didn't know whether to laugh or cry, because I'm totally Sparko in the ambulance, and I sit bolt upright on the ambulance bed. Literally goes, it's like an electric shock. Bolt upright. I go, Dad, tell him it's my hamstring." Bang. Straight back out. And in that moment, he goes, what have I created? Yeah. And I just think when you're seeing players wanting to go back onto the field, don't think ill of them. And that's where the steps forward taken in the HIAs and the independent doctors are absolutely critical to save. If a coward like myself wants to go back onto the field, can you imagine what some of these lads put themselves through?
Protect them from themselves.
Yeah, but here's the thing: is if you could, let's say we fast forward down the line 30 years, and things do get worse. Would you? This is always going to be my question about it. Would I change what I've had?
No, yeah. Again,
and
what's your answer?
Well, I would live. It's led to so many good things. Now, you don't know, the sliding doors moment is you don't know if you didn't play where that would have led you, but it's led to me where I am now and where I'll go, and I'm pretty happy with that. So, the memories, the friendships, obviously the other half, my better half.
Rugby's given us, isn't it? Tuesday, you're still at Minchinhampton.
So yeah, exactly. And Hazy summed this up, because obviously Hazy got Andrew Hazel, who finished on a head injury at Gloucester. He got approached by all the people who are involved in the legal side of it, and his answer was, "Rugby's given me far more than what it's taken away," and he said, "I don't want to be involved in it because I think it's given me opportunities that I wouldn't have had before," and it's a difficult one, and I still think that the best thing that's changed is that players aren't in that mentality anymore, because that was how we were brought up, that was how we were taught, and that is not out there anymore. So any mums and dads, it's not. Players are now encouraged to say when you're not fit and not play, and that didn't used to be the case, but that has completely changed now, and I think that's what's good about the sport, is we've jumped on it pretty quickly.
I've really enjoyed this, because most of our listeners and viewers will have spent the last 15 years or so watching you, do your thing on Sky, and they'll have seen you scoring tries in big games. I mean, a lot of them against Wales, but big games, etc. But I think it's been really interesting for me, and I'm very grateful to you for sort of that there is so much more to you, and I think it's been a fascinating kind of exploration of that. I do want to ask you about the book that is out now, World Class. How much of this story, and why you've decided to write a book, and how much of it is about your experiences, which people will know about, the high-profile international career in the media, etc., and how much have you actually put in of some of the other challenges that you have faced and gone through?
So the potted history of the book was March 21st, lockdown, no rugby, contracted to Telegraph to produce 40 articles, 45 articles a year. There's nothing to write about. One of the people I've always admired is Matthew Said. And I think Black Box Thinking, Rebel Ideas, Bounce are magical books where he brings simple ideas to life, brilliant storytelling, superb thread from start to finish, and some real tangible takeaways. And something had happened. I can't actually remember what happened that week, but I felt something had happened in the business section where feedback and the delivery of feedback had been poor. And I thought, I think sports people are quite good at feedback. I think, why don't I write a piece on feedback? Because we get taught to understand that you should enjoy feedback, you should embrace feedback, hug the messenger, don't shoot the messenger, all these sorts of ideas, but create the context around which feedback can be delivered in such a way that you're contextualizing it around making the person better, making the person feel better about themselves at the end without ruinous empathy. But so I started scribbling away, and then I thought, I started drifting into business, but my career in business hasn't been long enough to be able to have real gravitas on that. I'm enjoying what I'm doing. I'm a chief customer officer of an awesome company, but I haven't got 10, 15, 20 years of muscle memory. And I reached out to my best pal, Ben Fennell, who was 16 years CEO of Bartle Bogle Hegarty. You'll remember the adverts, Lynx, Levi's, Boddington's, Audi, all these Vorsprung, all these absolute classics. That's him. That's his group. And
he was an old teammate of yours at Durham.
Yeah, he was my captain at Durham. He was a prop. I was a back. He got an Oxford Blue, but then realised pretty quickly that his days would be spent at Roslyn Park. I would finish at Quinn's and nip down the 316 or the South Circular to the Rock at Roehampton and go on the pop with the Roslyn Park boys. I think most people at Bartle Bogle and Hegarty actually thought I worked there because I was always so interested in what he was doing, and we were just constant feedback to each other for 15, 20 years. And he was so supportive of me and my family through everything that went on through Freddie. I still remember he was in Singapore at the time, and I answered the door about 36 hours later, and he was sort of stood at my front door. He just canned all his work, just jumped on a plane and said, and he just sat there and listened to me rave about the world being a cruel and horrible place. And so we've always had a tremendous two-way relationship as to our ideas and themes, and we're constantly exploring, watching sports teams or business and discussing. Anyway, I thought I need to get Ben involved in this. Now, it started as one article. The Telegraph quite liked it, so can you do a couple more? So we started doing a couple more, and then such is Ben's appetite for a new idea to dive in and organise is he says, let's do a book. So the original idea was me to start writing some articles, and then Ben was like, well, we've written 10,000 words, why don't we just write another 70? And most people would go, wow, another 70,000 words. And we did it in 5 weeks. Bang, just sat down. The world was in complete lockdown, back and forth. I had to I started timing my emails to send them back to him at midnight, thinking, at least that'll give me till lunchtime tomorrow. Ben would be up at 4 a.m. editing. I'd wake up 7, ping, edit it, and need another 500 words on generosity, another 500 words on speed, another 500 words on pressure. So we built it around our own voices. And then we realised it would sound a little bit like, even though it was our combined voice, it would sound a little bit like a monologue. So we then went to our black books and went, right, we need to build this out now with sort of 45 to 50 interviews from sport and business. And so whether it was Michael Holding and Ebony Rainford Brent, to the Helen Richardson and Kate Richardson Walsh, to Michael Johnson, to I'd get Jason Fox from Special Forces, the Rose, and then Ben would go get Dave Lewis, ex-CEO of Tesco. We'd go to Philip Jansen, we'd go to Jeremy Darroch, we'd go to all these sorts of people that Ben had worked with for years and years and years. So would you mind spending an hour with us? We'll interview based around some topics, and we'll check the words with you, and then we'll weave them into this. And then it took a year of crafting and moulding. We used Ben's sister-in-law, Emily, to do all the, I'm trying to think what the right word is, the illustrations, but they're much more than illustrations. They really bring the words to life, and we're super proud of it. And that's to get to the point of the book, we found that across all the interviews we'd done, that there was this recurring theme kept popping up. If you celebrate difference, forge togetherness, you'll accelerate the growth of either the individual or the organisation. And so it's sort of 3 chapters: difference, togetherness, growth. And what we'd like it to be is a book where you might be struggling with pressure, you might be wanting to understand feedback, you might be wanting to talk about purpose, culture, communication, teamship. And within each of those chapters, there are 5 in each of the groups. There'd be sort of 5 to 6 large pieces of work exploring ideas and then finding actual historical, empirical evidence to back it up or question it. And then on the back of that, you sort of get takeaways at the end of each chapter that you might just keep going back to and referring to it. And we're really pleased with how it's come out. I mean, there haven't been a 1,000 reviews on Amazon, but the 3 that are in are all 5-star. So stop the count now. And then I'm sort of not necessarily doing the rounds, but then just popping out and seeing who I can talk to and say, look, that's what the book's all about. So look, I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about that briefly.
It's interesting.
I just want to say there's something deeply, deeply ironic about coming on this shower of shite to talk about something that's titled world class. But togetherness, what were the three? Togetherness, teamwork, and growth.
Difference, togetherness. Celebrate difference.
Yeah.
I mean, we're a case in point.
Yeah.
Forge togetherness.
Yeah.
And you will accelerate growth.
Also, works for the three of us.
It's an interesting spin. Not spin, because that's the wrong word, but a lot of sports people now get into this leadership-y, like, do it like sport do. But what's good about this is obviously Ben did it as a businessman, and you're combining the two of how it works as a sporting, in terms of sporting excellence, a bit more about how the team work. If the team doesn't work, the individual won't work. And I think putting them both together is a strong combo.
Yeah.
It's funny, isn't it, now with the coaches that we've been very fortunate with, Al Sanderson, and you look at where
Terry Flannery.
Yeah, and you look at where coaching is going, it's very much on that term of relationship rather than the old days of we
do
lost,
this, do that.
Train harder.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't really.
Razor
really
Robertson
work
had
that
a
way.
great one. He's Scott Robertson. So he's
Because you did bar bars with him.
fabulous interview. I think at some stage, no doubt, he'll be up in the Northern Hemisphere.
Do you think he might succeed Eddie?
So
I'd love to see him break dancing on Twickenham.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reality is if Eddie's there for another couple of years, where will Steve Borthwick be in a couple of years if Leicester continue that, and his experience with Japan and both England and you suspect, it'd be great to see it'd be the second Preston Grasshopper player to coach England.
After your dad?
After Dad, yeah. But Razor is super sharp, and to go back to, what did he say? Get the heart, get the player. And it tends to go away against everything that we were brought up with in the 60s and 70s. It's actually, I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to understand what makes you tick. I'm not going to tell you sunshine comes out your backside or you're the best thing since sliced bread, but I'll find a way to work with you to allow you to take the field on a Saturday so that you can bring your best rugby to the occasion. And I was lucky enough to work with him for the bars, and he's just that infectious character. You'd follow him anywhere. You really would.
It is so true that I still talk about environment, and you want to be in an environment that you enjoy, which is an obvious thing to say. But when you're getting paid to be a professional, you sometimes will be in an environment that you don't think is going to succeed because you're getting paid to do it. And it's obviously, with contracts, it's very hard to leave. And I'd always say that period through that England period, never looked forward to going away as much as I did in that, because of the combinations that we had, the card schools we had, watching Jono play GoldenEye and all the other.
Was that a thing?
Forward, yes, because it was worth it just to see him chop another wall down. There was it was a time where the team room was always filled. It was never empty. Yeah. People went and sat in there, and even if they didn't want to play pool or they didn't want to be on
countdown in the physio room with cakes and hot chocolate. After training at Penny Hill Park.
The word game after the Friday before every single international, we played the letter game or the number name game. Everyone pretty much played it, and it was just there wasn't anything disappearing off to your room, and it was all built around hanging out together, and that is sort of where you've gone full circle now to what Al talks about in terms of the meaningful conversations between each other. It's not about rugby, it's about family, it's about passion. So as you say, you win their heart, you win the player.
One last question before we've actually got something quite fun to do before we finish the show. You personally, not affinity, not the book, etc. Where would you like to be in 12, 18 months? It's sort of going back to what we started this show talking about, which is, your story is extraordinary. And I'm so glad we've done this, because I think there'll be a lot of people who'll go, whoa, I've always seen the smooth guy in front of the cameras, and I saw the guy with the peroxide hair running them in for England. But your story has got so many layers and so much depth to it. Where would you like to be in 18, 24, 36 months?
Physically in good shape still. Are
you training harder than ever?
So we've got a group that got me through. I think everyone needs a training buddy. Right. And people go, oh, you're an ex-international sportsman, you must love training. I really don't like training. But I've found a Durham University group who are my best buddy. They go by the names of Dooney, Kalman, Minty, and Benny. Ben Fennell being one of them.
Yep.
And now Kano's joined the group. All of us, Durham, and on Zoom, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday mornings, 7 a.m. Sometimes 6 because 3 of them are insomniacs. Right. We're on, and someone picks a session each time, and it's on a rower, and you stick it, and you go and wait. And actually, we've started to get half decent at it to such an extent that Benny's 2K time, he's 50 years old, is 6:23. He's only like 15, 16 seconds behind Ripley, right? I mean, he's proper. If he entered the world indoors 3 weeks ago, he'd have come fourth. Right. So there's a team event. So they're waiting for me to become 50. So I'm 50 almost October 20th next year. Yeah. And then we're going to start traveling, which when the world's open up, I'm going to start entering. So my 2K times, it's okay. It's about 6:42. Yeah. It's all right. Kemble's coming down. He's 6:48. Dooney's a horse. He's 6:53, but I reckon he's got a 6:30 in him. And the whole point of the team event is there's 4 of you, and you've got to do 10,000 meters. You can do as many changes or as few changes as you want. So our collector, I've got some 1970s Eastern European Adidas tracksuits.
I thought we were going to get somewhere else there.
We've got some
medication program.
We've got some full tracks. So physically, I'd like to be competing with those boys, having fun. I'd still like to be running around at Maidenhead on a Tuesday and Thursday. And mentally, I keep writing it down every year and keep struggling to change. I'd like to stop sweating the small things. Okay. And still find it difficult not to sweat. I let the urgent get in the way of the important too often. I am improving at it. I'm working at it. It may need therapy to help me try and just park things and compartmentalize and understand this is now family time, this is now work time, this is now play time. I blur the lines too often, and I have some friends who are really good at differentiating between what mode they're in, and that's my work on for 18 months to be better at that.
Good on you. I was hoping you were going to say I'm going to be good at coffee and a hobnob, which is our school of thought here. The fact that you're going for world championship and record rowing times possibly indicates that there's a bit of work to be done. But
we did something on my festival of sport this year. So, and Tinds, you'd have been top 25 in the world. So
is that right?
And this is all age groups. This is all age groups. So it's 1 minute. Go as far as you can in 1 minute row. You've got to set it up as 1 minute because otherwise people do a rolling clock, ends up over 4. So it's literally a hard start with a hard stop. And we did it in Norfolk, and I wasn't going to do it. I knew he's a beast at it. And he got on the rowing machine and said, "Come on, for the old times, one more go at this." And by the way, you can really hurt yourself in 1 minute on a rowing machine. And I was absolutely mega chuffed with 3:59 in a minute. So, and this is a sort of challenge to people who are listening there. Tin smashed a 3:77 in a minute. I think it averaged 1:16 for the whole minute. And they are proper numbers. And I know you're early 40s, but there's a little challenge for people in the good, the bad, and the rugby to see who can.
We've always had it. He's got a watt bike at home, and he'll always go, "Oh, have you got a session for me?" So we used to send him a session, and then he'd bang it out, and then I'd send a picture of what he did, and he'd go, "Okay, we'll do it again." So yeah, it's always there's always a little bit of competition there.
For those less interested in that, I'll be drifting downstream with a parasol and a pink lemonade. Anyone's welcome in my boat anytime. Greens, I've really enjoyed it. You've enjoyed it?
Yeah, no, always
quite therapeutic.
Yeah,
quite nice to get it off the chest sometimes.
Yeah, and good. And look, I really appreciate. I wouldn't say I'm an avid listener, but I've watched and listened and enjoyed some of the. I think you've had some fabulous guests. I love it when Ellis.
He's good, isn't he?
I mean, he's so good.
He's so good.
Do you think if Eddie drifts away from the old and brings in a few of the new youngsters, that Ellis has got a shout at captain?
I don't see how you would look beyond Marrow at the moment. And Marrow is what, 26? So he's got 4 more years. I tell you what I'm fascinated about Ellis, and it was the home game. Not
Sarries.
Yes. Was it this? Did they won 13-12?
Yeah,
something happened. I think he dropped a high ball, a long 22, or it was a kick. This 22s can still happen if you miss a kick. And I think it was a 22. Sarries went long. Then it was like rugby league. Someone caught it and passed it to him. And it was a simple drop off for him to carry. He dropped it. And he just thought, right, the next 4 minutes, he's going to go around kicking heads. This could be a problem for him. And actually, he was unbelievably calm. I loved the fact that Backy said something to him on Twitter and he came jumping.
He doesn't hang around
straight out the bat. I loved. We did the World Cup warm-up game, didn't we? Is it at Leeds?
Oh yeah, that's right.
Or
No,
Newcastle.
It was Newcastle, 2019.
And,
he went and saw a kid who he'd been messaging
he came
on
for an interview with us.
That's right.
And we just weren't used to this front-on, full-on chat, and I just loved it. I thought it was so fresh and remarkably endearing. And I think the captaincy is resting on his shoulders very easily, very nicely at Leicester, and they're doing great stuff.
They are. Keeping on the Tigers.
I just love that. Whenever I ring him, he goes, "Bab."
You're right there, Bab.
He doesn't say hello. He just goes, "Bab."
He's very good. He's very good at what he's doing at the moment. We've loved having you on. Will you hang around for a couple more minutes? Because show 2, last week, I think we went a bit menu-y. We've got a new section of the show called GBNR Spiz, which is Hask's way of saying business, essentially, and he is the king of the Spiz. So here is a section of the show that we're going to be calling the GBNR Spiz, where we're going to be running you through all the pressing GBNR news that you need to know. And this week, it's all about the prize draw, the first of which we're about to do. This week, it is 6 cases from the Rugby Wine Club and £500 in cash that's up for grabs. £500, I hear you say. That is correct. We're going to give the winner a call right now. I don't know how on earth we're going to do this, but let's give it a go and see if they answer. Hold your horses. Oh.
Hello.
Hi, Rob.
Yay! That in itself is an achievement.
Hi, Robert.
Hello, Robert DaCosta.
Hello.
It's Mike Tindall here. How are you?
Hello. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hello. I'm going to start again. Hello, Robert. It's Mike Tindall. How are you?
Great. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm just phoning you to say that you are the winner of our 6 cases of wine and from the Rugby Wine Club and our £500 cash. How do you feel about that?
Awesome. Thank you.
You sound
That's great.
ecstatic.
You're Robert, it's Will Greenwood here. You're remarkably underwhelmed by what's just taken place. Have we caught you at a work moment? Are you in the office and you're in the middle of a conference call just closing $1 billion deal and can we get off the phone, or is this something you do every day?
I am not something every day. No, I am sat at my desk in an open plan office.
Okay,
perfect.
Can you say hello to everyone in the office for us?
That is awesome.
I'd like you to stand up and shout, "I've got 2 blokes with big noses on the phone."
I think remarkably underwhelmed is how a lot of our audience feel about this.
Looks, but I'll get
Robert, hello, it's Alex here. Congratulations on obviously on being our first prize draw winner. It's very nice to know that someone entered, and it's very nice to know that we've got someone to give it to. Tell us a little bit about you. What is it you're doing? Where are you? Where have you come from?
I'm sat in the office at work.
Doing what?
I work in finance in London.
Wow.
So enjoyed the pod a lot, which I heard about the competition.
Good.
So who's your team?
Sale Sharks.
Because what, are you born up there? Are you just a fan of Manu? Are you a big disciple of Alex Sanderson? Why are you a Sale Sharks fan?
Big fan of Manu. But no, I grew up in Sheffield, so that was the local team. So I used to drive across there with my dad to watch the games there.
Good on you.
Shame about the weekend. Gloucester turned you over. Unlucky.
Yeah, it was a shame. But, I mean, yeah.
We almost threw it away for you. Missed the kick at the end to win it.
And have you been a bit of a listener of The Good, the Bad and the Rugby over the last 18 months or so? And I'd love to know who your favourite guest has been in that time, if so.
I did actually enjoy Alex Sanderson coming on.
He was good, actually. He was inspirational.
He was good.
Yeah. I mean, I listen to the pod most weeks. But yeah, enjoy it a lot.
Is it your commute listen, or is it just
bath time listen?
Yeah,
or
one of my commute listens.
Good on you. I'd like to hear that. Well, listen, we'll keep it short and sweet. You've won yourself 6 cases of wine, thanks to the Rugby Wine Club, and £500 cash. So there's a party in there somewhere. What are you going to do?
Amazing.
Can you get through 6 cases of wine in an afternoon?
Wow, that's a lot of wine.
That is a lot of wine. Tinds will come and help you if you're needing an afternoon session.
I'm up for that.
Good on you, Robert. I mean, I hope this has cheered up your day a little bit. I know we record on a Monday. It's a Monday afternoon, and it sounds like you've got a hell of a lot on the plate. But hopefully, 6 cases of wine and £500 cash just puts a bit into your Monday afternoon.
Amazing, thank you.
Not at all. We will leave it there. Back to your paperwork. I can tell it's intense, but thank you for dialing in. We'll send all the wine over to you shortly. Enjoy the cash and keep listening to the pod.
Amazing, thank you very much.
Good on you,
Cheers,
Robert.
mate.
Enjoy the rest of your week.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for dialing in.
Bye.
Good. And if that is the stereotypical good, the bad, and the rugby listener. I think we need to send some fireworks out with our next prize draw.
Can next week, if whoever wins,
Perhaps we'll send them the wine before we call them.
Can you have a little bit more enthusiasm about it?
What I'm looking forward to is we've got the prize, the winning prize ticket is an all expenses paid trip to the Maldives, and we'll be dialing up someone called Nigel from Scunthorpe. You've won yourself a trip to the Maldives. Thanks very much. Great. Okie doke. There goes Robert, who I hope is going to throw a hell of a party with his 6 cases of wine and the 500 quid cash. We've got a couple of thank yous to do. We've actually got a few more prizes to mention as well.
We've got a lot of amazing prizes coming up to be won.
We think they're amazing, even if the winners don't.
Every Monday until the 1st of November, where we'll do the grand prize, which no less you can win a fully all-inclusive paid trip to the Maldives and $3,000 in cash.
No way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good, isn't it?
Wow.
The runner-up will
It's very ITV, this.
Yeah, that's great, man.
The runner-up will get a backstage access to a pod recording and $1,000 in cash.
Not so good, but
you
still
could
worth entering.
You could possibly not just come to the backstage and just take the money
the
and run. Before that, though, next week you can win a pair of Premiership League fixture tickets of your choosing, as well as some GBR merch. And then the following week, it's 2 Autumn Nations Cups tickets of your choosing, as well as some GBR merch as well.
Please bring some
Who's
enthusiasm.
giving you the holiday?
Oh, well, that's good of you to ask, Will. Thank you for teeing us up. We do need to say a big thank you to Be Away for a Very Island Resort and Spa and the Rugby Wine Club for supplying the prizes.
Brilliant. These are
You
great prizes.
can come again.
I'm mildly surprised by the quality of
You'd be
the
surprised.
prizes.
You'd be surprised. Flies to or whatever.
Obviously, you've only heard the bits that you listen to, but we are a well-run ship that we pay. We don't do anything
We've got
with.
very good team around us bailing furiously, I think is the expression we're looking for. The other thing, actually, we do want to mention is that the proceeds raised are going to Cure Parkinson's and Restart as well, which is the RPA's charity. 2 charities very close to our hearts here at GBNR, and some good money hopefully being raised for those too. You can get 5 tickets for a £5. Even you might enter at that level. Dust off the wallet. 15 for a tenner, 40 for 20 quid, and 150 tickets for 50 quid. Head to goodbadrugby.com/prize draw to purchase your tickets. We'd love to see you there. Good money being raised for good causes and some good prizes up for grabs as well. Thank you for coming on. What's the rest of the day hold? Tell me, what does the rest of the day hold?
Well, I've got a work call at 5, and then I'm part of a Manchester City supporters club based here in London, and they realised that we're not just a bunch of Muppet City fans. Actually, it's a few quite influential people who happen to support City, who probably run some of the big FTSE 100 companies in London, and we tend to have a quarterly dinner, a couple of glasses of vino, and City now send some guests down. And so it's pandering slightly to yesteryear, but for me, I mean, two of the greats of the Uwe Rosler.
Yeah, 1994 all over again.
Who gets into most people's all-time great City 11, although sometimes he's pushed to the bench by the other guest, the king of Bermuda, that is Sean the Man Goater.
Feed the goat.
Oh, and he'll come on, feed the goat. And he'll score. He used to shin him in. He used to go in, and he's the
backside.
Most he's coming down. So I'm nipping down to see him in Kensington for an hour. Have a little bit, a few canaps, and a glass of the fizzy stuff.
We've got to go. Before we do, I just want to ask you: you conquered the world in the sport that you grew up in. You wanted more than anything else. And when that full-time whistle goes, I wanted Platoon and I wanted Balboa. And what I got was 2 spring lambs embracing 10 feet in the air, screaming, "World Cup! World Cup!" What? I mean, of all the planning and the foresight that you guys had as a team, surely you could have come up with something a little better than skipping with Johnny in the iconic moments after the full-time whistle went.
Difficult to plan for.
Not really.
Difficult to know who'll be on the field at that stage.
Right.
Difficult to know who's
You
still
were very
out
quick
there.
to Wilkinson, though.
Yeah.
I didn't see you running for Leonard or Thompson.
I think I was running to see Tinds, and Johnny intercepted, and I thought, put my marketing hat on and go. The problem is,
this is the shot that everyone will use.
The problem
for the
is,
next
no
50
one
years.
actually knows who he's hugging. It's just the back of my head.
Oh, the nose gives it away.
I know there will be one photographer somewhere who has the other side.
But no, he deleted it. He deleted it in the moment.
No one. I promise you, I've not found one. I've not. Imagine how many people were taking pictures of Johnny Wilkinson at that moment in time. I've not found one which has a facial. of G-Man.
The G-Man. The G-Man. I remember when you were trying to bring back the G-Man. It still hasn't worked, does it?
Let's leave the G-Man for another show. Will, it's been a privilege and a pleasure. Thank you for coming on. You've gone to some very interesting places and we're very grateful. World Class by Will Greenwood and Ben Fennell is out now. Go buy it. Go enjoy it.
Is that still your favourite backs move? Is that what?
It was good on that, wasn't it?
You loved it.
12 slides, 12 slides, 13, 15 at the mid. I prefer, I think...
What did you score off using World Class? Was that Co in Australia, 2002?
Yeah, that was Drifter 2. Drifter 1 we scored. Drifter was my favourite. Drifter was a version of World Class.
Slide and two people come up the middle.
Drifter was if you pick one move that conquered the world for 2.5 years, Drifter did it. Same setup, 3 different options. No one could read it.
Yeah, those are the days. On that note, lovely to have you. Love to the fam. And yeah, hopefully the book goes extremely well. It's a great read, even just for the prologue. Clooney at the urinals, and it grows from there. Can I say that? I don't know. We've been the good, the bad, and the rugby. We'll see you next week. Look after yourselves in the meantime. Bye-bye.